Did you ever play Croc, Legend of the Gobbos on the PS1? It was also on the Saturn too, but if you have, then that's probably why you clicked on this video. Croc was pretty successful back in the day. It was on the PS1 as well as the Sega Saturn, even got greatest hits on the PS1. I'll be honest though, I rented it as a kid, it was okay, but that's just how I've always thought the game was. It's just okay. I've beaten this game too, and just wasn't enthused with how the game played. It feels very, very stiff and very tanky with how Croc feels, and just wasn't into the platforming. Definitely a lot better than some platformers out there on the PS1, but Croc was definitely just mid in my opinion. Croc is getting a remaster in 2025, so if you want to play this game and you haven't yet, I definitely would wait and see how that turns out, because the controls might be a little bit better, and it might be a better experience overall. On the other hand, I've been into the Game Boy Color a little bit lately and discovered that Croc actually is on the Game Boy Color, as well as the second game, but I decided to start with the first one. I did just go through this whole entire game and definitely want to discuss what's going on with it, so sit back, relax, let's talk about Croc for the Game Boy Color. The original game for Croc was developed by Argonaut Studios, but the Game Boy Color version is developed by Virtuacraft. It was released in 2000 on the Game Boy Color. There was hardly anything I could find about this company, Virtuacraft. Matter of fact, they only lasted for a couple years or so, but what I did find, they kind of made a lot of crappy games, but they made the Powerpuff Girl games on the Game Boy Color, and I know some people who've played that, but yeah, that's about it. The plot is pretty much the same as the original console version. The main villain, Baron Dante, he captures all these Gobbos, these little brown creature things, and Croc's gotta save them all and stop Baron Dante, so pretty much the same story as the original console. As you already can tell, this game is a side-scrolling platform game, and it's kind of a run-of-the-mill thing like you've done before. There's a couple different things here that he's got going though. Just like the console game, he can jump and use his tail swipe hitting B. You can actually hold B2 to do a run, and then the last function you can do is if you double tap A, you can actually do a ground pound after you jump and land on an enemy and crush them, just like the original game. Like any other platformer you've played before in the past, like Donkey Kong Country or Mario World or something, you get to the end of the level, you move on to the next. That's all there is to it. And at the end of the level, you can hit these gong things like in the console version and you'll finish the level, or you can do, and they pulled a Kong here, you can spell all the bonus words out and you can go to the gold gate and do a bonus round at the end of every level. His collectibles in this game are pretty simple. You collect those Gobbos things, and sometimes you can bust out those question mark boxes, and you can get gems. Gems is actually your vitality as well. It's kind of like Sonic. If you get hit, you lose some of those gems, and if you have 0 and get hit, you'll lose a life. To be real though, it's kind of hard to die if you have a ton of gems, or if you fall off a level, of course. Croc has a few other functions he can do in this game. He can climb on stuff, and you'll be doing that in some of the levels. And in every world almost, there's one level that is different than a platforming level. You have a minecart level, then you have this snow skiing level, then you have an underwater level like Donkey Kong Country. They at least put some gameplay variety here. There's 4 worlds total in this game, about 5 levels each, and a boss. If you do get a game over or you want to quit playing, you do have a password system here that you can use, so that's very useful. And when you do get a game over, you just start that level again, so that's kind of nice. If you do end up dying, there is no checkpoints technically. You go in different areas in each level, you just start back from the area of that level again. The level design, minus the skiing and like swimming levels, they all kind of feel the same a little bit. And I have to say, the difficulty spike is weird in this game. This game to me got kind of harder on the mountains, but then the game in the desert, it's kind of hard at first, then it gets a little easy, and the castle, last world, just a freaking joke in my opinion. I beat that world in like 10 minutes. One thing you probably notice about this game too, you move incredibly fast in this game. It's very fast. It's like Croc drank 3 monsters and he's like, oh my god guys, I gotta get going, holy crap, he's fucking Goggos! But in all seriousness, yes, it's a very fast-paced game and it definitely takes getting used to. And mainly because you won't really know what's coming up and what to expect and how to react at first, because there's a lot of enemies in this game. They're everywhere. And I swear, I feel like the enemies is the challenge, not the platforming. Platforming is just very, very basic in this game, but they have a lot of enemies, I'll give them that. As I mentioned earlier, there's one boss in every world after you beat all the levels, and when you get to the boss fight, it's a freaking joke. These boss fights are very pathetic. They're not like the worst fights of all time, they're just painfully easy. Like, it's so easy to just beat them, and they don't really do a lot of damage, and even the final boss is barely a challenge. I thought Croc on the PS1 the same thing. The bosses in that game were just pathetically easy. It's right here too in the Game Boy Color version. This could be just a personal gripe, but I had to mention it, but hit detection is definitely kind of wonky in this game. Whenever you hit an enemy, your tail slap thing that I think always sucked in the original, you hit an enemy, it kind of just feels like it happens and doesn't happen sometimes. But I learned that as I played the game, it got a little bit better, and I started attacking right when you get on the enemy, but I also found ground pounding to be a lot more effective, so I started doing that a whole lot more. Croc on the Game Boy Color is a lot like its counterpart on the console, and it's just okay. It's not a bad game or anything. The game looks fantastic, by the way. The graphics and pixel art, man, this really shines in my opinion, and it's just a good looking game overall. The music's also not too bad either, but the gameplay, it's definitely there, it's alright, but it's not super polished, but not super bad or anything. So I just think it's okay. I do think this is more fun to play though than the original home console version. That's just my opinion though. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with that. I really think Croc on the PS1 or Saturn or whatever is just an alright game, and this is the same way. If this game was just a little bit more polished, maybe slowed down just a tad, and had less enemies and maybe more platforming levels like that accustomed to his abilities, I think this game really could have gone a long way. But, you know, and you can't blame the developer for this because they were probably new and they did the best they could. In my opinion though, if those things actually happened, this game could have definitely gone a long way. You probably guessed it, yes, this game is only on the Game Boy Color, it's never been re-released ever, and it probably never will be. This game is about $10 to $11 or so loose, and that's not a bad price for a game like this. If you're kind of bored and you want to play somewhat decent quality on the Game Boy Color, Croc is definitely there. It's not going to win any awards, there's definitely a lot better platformers on the Game Boy Color, but this game in general, it's definitely worth your time if you want to have an hour and a half to 2 hours to kill. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to give it a like. You got something to say? Leave a comment down below. And of course, if you want to see more content like this in the future, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy.